Awesome. Okay, let's get to it. Take me a quick sip, y'all. Crazy morning so far. Been up since about 4:45-ish, running a little bit late. Had to just got back from taking one of our daughters to post-op appointment with her ankle surgery. So hold on here 1 second. All right, let's get to it, family. All right, so we're gonna jump right into this because this is gonna be an important one here for you, right? Stop self-sabotaging your finances, right? All right, what's the one thing that keeps most people from making powerful financial decisions? I have that answer for you. And this answer is not anything I pulled out the air. This is from real life case studies working with clients on a daily basis. The answer is fear of the unknown. Let me say that again. What is the one thing that keeps most people from making powerful financial decisions? It's the fear of the unknown. And I'm going to give you guys some case studies on this today. And the goal with this training is we want to teach you how to identify and plan for the worst case scenario so that you can move forward with clarity instead of freezing in fear and making poor financial decisions out of anxiety. So, man, so many things I'm going to discuss on this piece. But let me first kind of tell you a story. I was working with one of my coaches, John Whiting, over at a Bulletproof Entrepreneur. And one of the things that he was teaching us was he was really teaching stoicism, but he didn't frame it that way, right? It was about having this bulletproof mindset. But part of having this bulletproof mindset is being able to look at any scenario and instead of having, a negative charge, right? So when you look kind of look like the charges on a battery, you have like a positive and a negative. If you have too much negative, the battery's not going to work. And if you have too much positive, the battery's not going to work. It has to be at equilibrium. Okay. So when you take that principle, it's the same way about making financial decisions. If you're looking at a scenario and all you're looking at is the negative, then you're gonna, have what they call it paralysis by analysis. But if you're also looking only at the positive, you might be over optimistic and not being pragmatic enough and looking at all of the potential challenges. So you want to look at it in the middle. And he taught us going through his program was in order to have a bulletproof mindset, we would have to start neutralizing the charge. Nothing is super bad and nothing is super good. It just is. It's kind of like the temperature, right? It's kind of like temperature, right? If you're here in Columbus, Ohio with us, 90 degrees may be really hot. Like, ooh, it's a burner out here, right? But you take that 90 degrees and you put that on the sun, and it's absolutely freezing because what they consider what's considered hot for the sun is very different than Columbus, Ohio, right? So when you start to, neutralize situations and not be overly optimistic, but also to not be overly negative and look at it for what it is, you start to ask yourself some questions. But before you start to ask yourself those questions, what John taught us in Bulletproof Entrepreneur was you want to make decisions sober, right? Which sounds pretty obvious, right? But let me lean into that a little bit more. When we say make decisions sober, when you're looking at a situation, you're up against making a decision. You want to look at that with a sober, clear lens. So you don't want to be super negative, nor do you want to be super positive. You want to be in the middle. And that's kind of the basis of stoicism, y'all. Like that is what drives and kind of, is the framework around stoicism. It's not good, it's not bad. It just is. Now, this serves me extremely well when I'm working with my clients, right? Because I'm kind of case in point. If the market is up, I'm like, okay, great, the market is up. If the market is down, I'm like, okay, the market is down. But you'll never find me super emotional about what's going on with the market, because one is something I cannot control. One, I'm only going to be super passionate about things that I can actually control. Other than that, I look at it for what it is. Guess what? The market goes up and the market goes down. There's a benefit to both. If the market was always going up, there wouldn't be any buying opportunities, and you would be paying you're paying overpriced, prices for stocks. If the market was only going down, then you'd be looking at losing money, right? So you kind of need a good balance of both. That makes sense, y'all? So I'm going to kind of first share that with you, and then I'm going to get into a couple real life scenarios that I believe is going to bless you today. So when looking at making a financial decision, right? So maybe this is investing, maybe this is taking early retirement, maybe this is, starting a business. One of the exercises that I do is I go through a worst case scenario, you know, um, uh, layout, right? I look at, okay, what are the worst things that can happen here? Because it's easy to be like, oh, I'm gonna start a business, I'm gonna make a ton of money and be a multimillionaire. Oh, I'm gonna invest in here and it's gonna go up and I'm gonna make hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars. Oh, all these things, right? But when you look at worst case scenario, in addition to, hey, what's the best that can happen, you're able to make more clear decisions. So let me kind of give you an example here. Recently, I was working with a client, love this client to death. And they're a newer client to us. They've been with us now probably, I don't know, 60 days or so. And like many government employees, they were faced with this decision like, oh my gosh, do I need to retire early? Right. And this can be a high anxiety decision, right? Like, so here's the deal, y'all. We have been so conditioned to believe that we have to have a job, that not having a job scares us to death, even if we don't need the job. So let me say that again, right? I remember when I was terminated and fired from my last corporate position. This was on July 8th, 2014. And I remember the stress I was under those first 72 hours, right? Where am I going to land? How am I going to make money? How am I going to be able to provide for my family? Like I had all of these questions, right? And I'm like, oh, I got to get a job. I got to get a job. And what was going on was I was conditioned. I was conditioned into dependency. And when I say conditioned into dependency, though I know the job didn't care anything about me, right? I know that corporate America did not care anything about little old me. They were going to use me up and spit me out, find somebody to replace me, and they were going to keep on driving profits and things of that nature. So, but we've been conditioned to believe like that's where we're supposed to be. That's what we're supposed to do. Is very similar, almost not similar, but exact to the conditioning that many slaves had when they were emancipated. Many slaves, after they were freed, were like, man, do we leave the plantation? We don't know how to take care of ourselves, right? That was the mindset. So it's a slavery mindset. And this is very common. Even if we're not talking about slavery, with respect to the United States of America, we can go all the way back to biblical times, right? With Moses, you know what I'm saying? Moving the people out of Egypt, right? So they get blessed, the Red Sea is crossed, if you know that story, right? And then they go into, these 40 years where they're complaining like, oh my goodness, things were better off where we were. So it is human nature to want to be dependent upon some other than ourselves or our faith, right? So this is conversation is going to be totally free flowing today. So one, having faith in yourself that you can figure it out. One, that's what confidence is. Confidence is having the belief that you can figure it out. You may not know it, but you can figure out how to get a positive, outcome out of what you're going through, right? So that's one thing, that whole faith piece, right? The other piece is when looking at, hey, what is the worst case scenario here? So let's dive into it. So we had this client, right? And they're up with this, decision like, hey, do I take early retirement? And I remember we had worked through their plan and we had crunched the numbers and the numbers looked great on our end. And a client texted me on a Friday, and you could just tell from the nature of the test that they were concerned, right? Hey, I need to talk to you. I have to make a decision here by this certain date, right? And so I was like, okay, hey, happy to jump on a quick call with you. Boom, let's rock and roll. So jumped into a quick call, but before we got on the call, I said, hey, your homework is this. Your homework before we get on this call is to list all the worst things that could happen, right? So we went through this exercise. So we get on our call and hey, what's the worst thing that could happen from you taking early retirement? Well, what if I can't pay my bills? What if I run out of money? What if I lose my house? What if the market crashes? And I loved going through this exercise because for every worst case scenario we had, there was a solution already in place, right? So we had this concern about, oh my goodness, what if I run out of money? Well, we had built a plan to give them an extra, couple grand a month anyway, right? So we had already solved for their bare needs. It was already solved for. A client had this fear like, oh my gosh, what if I lose my house? They only owe like, 100,000 or so on the house, a couple 100,000 on the house, and they had, over $1 million in assets. So they could easily pay the house off and never have a payment on. So losing the house was, let's keep it. It was kind of funny. We ran it through Chat GPT, and Chat GPT was like, okay, let's keep it real. The likelihood of you losing your house is like non-existent, right? So what's wild going through this process was what was the constraint here, what was driving the person crazy wasn't the actual numbers. It was truly just, hey, I have this fear of something new. And when we have this fear of something new, or the fear of the unknown, which is the definition of anxiety, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? You know what, I'm just not going to move because all of these what ifs. When you're making decisions based upon anxiety versus looking at real data, versus looking at, hey, let me plan for worst case scenario, what's going to happen, you may find yourself stuck. So, we had a great conversation with the client. We stayed on a Zoom call there for a while and looked at all the worst case scenarios. And as we looked at the worst case scenarios, we looked at, hey, these are the solutions that have solved for the worst case scenarios. And afterwards, the client told us they had peace of mind. And it's like, great, we did our job. And again, we didn't go through, hey, this is the best stock and this is what you're going to make your money, right? We didn't even get into strategies too much. It was literally just looking at the data and looking at the solutions, right, to the worst case scenarios. So this is a practice I do quite often. And sometimes I forget to articulate that I've already done this for the client. So when I'm putting a strategy together to help somebody become financially free, my own self included, right? Because we walk it like we talk it. Anything that we do is anything that we recommend a client do, we can show you where we've already done it. So as I'm even walking through this strategy, I'm planning for worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, worst case scenario is I know the numbers tell me that, I could have a traditional retirement, at age, 60, 62. So I know that's worst case scenario for me. Best case scenario, the goal is to be work optional by the age of 50. So because I've already solved for worst case scenario, I can have confidence moving into best case scenario, right? This is investing 101. This is what Warren Buffett says all the time. Hey, the first rule to investing is don't lose money. And the second rule to investing is don't forget rule number one. So if you've already solved for the worst case scenario, what is the worst thing that can happen, then you're able to make financial decisions a lot easier. So quick pause real quick. Let's lean into this. Think about a financial decision that you need to make now. And then ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen, right? So I used to think losing my job was the worst thing that could happen. Oh my God, I lose my job. I lose that direct deposit. Okay. So I lose my job. What's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, I could be broke. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, might not be able to pay my bills on time. Okay. Might not be able to go out to eat. Okay. Might not be able to invest the way I'm currently investing. Okay. But again, let's look at both charges of that battery. Me losing my job ended up being the best thing that could ever happen to me because me losing my job was like, okay, well, I now have to get creative. I now have a sense of urgency to do something I had planned on doing anyway. I had already planned on being an entrepreneur, but I was so dependent, right? I had this direct deposit habit, kind of like a crackhead, like, oh my gosh, I need that direct deposit every 2 weeks, right? When I broke the habit and the dependency, and realized that the only person responsible for my outcome is me, and I took full ownership of that and started to look at the situation I was in that everybody else would have looked at him in a negative situation and said, no, this is actually what I needed. Then I was able to go out here and create multiple six-figure businesses as an entrepreneur and have time freedom. So, like a lot of times, y'all, and here's the deal, and I'm going to really lean into this. If you're struggling making a financial decision and all you're doing is looking at the bad things that can happen, that's okay. That might be a superpower. That is your brain trying to protect you. That is how your brain and your body is wired. It is wired to protect you from danger. So instead of being, paralyzed by all these are the list of the bad things that can happen, list out those bad things. Look it dead in the face and say, hey, if this happened, what is the true outcome? And then ask yourself this question. If this happened, how could this actually work in my favor? Right. So going back to our client here, we looked at the numbers and she had a level of peace of mind, as you could just see, smile on her face and a whole nine, because she realized that the things that were holding her back were actually the cheat code to giving her peace of mind to move forward because we had solved for all of the worst case scenarios. All right, let me give you another one. Hold on, let me take a sip of this coffee here. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, let me give you another scenario here. So working right now with some clients, and they have this, dilemma, right? They currently live in a home, and they had this dilemma of, hey, we want to move into our next, next to dream home, right? We want to step up our living accommodations, if you will. And they're torn between, hey, do we sell our current home and use that cash to buy the new home? Or do we keep our current home rented out, use the equity in that home in the form of a line of credit as the down payment of the new home, and now have our new home, but then have this other property, right? And they're going through these lists, they're sending me the list of questions and concerns that they have. And it's almost to the point that they're trying to talk themselves out of keeping a cash flow generating assets that's going to give them massive tax benefits. So we already went through the scenario of asking ourselves the three questions, right? And these are the three questions that we tell all of our clients and we coach people on. Every financial decision comes down to three questions, right? Does this increase my cash flow or passive income? Does this reduce my expenses? Does this reduce my taxes? That is the trifecta. Those are the three things that are going to put you in a place to be financially free. Because if financial freedom is measured by time, and time freedom is measured simply by how you get to having time freedom is, do I have enough passive income to cover my monthly expenses? So if your monthly expenses are 5,000 a month and you have $5,001 coming a month in passive income and monthly recurring income, then you're technically financially free. right? Because you know your bills are paid without you having to trade your time for dollars. That's what financial freedom is, right? So going back to, our trifecta question, does this increase my cash flow or my passive income? Does this reduce my expenses? Because if you reduce your expenses, what do? You increase your positive cash flow. Okay. And then the third one, does this reduce my taxes? Your tax bill is that bill that's probably going to have an impact on almost over 50% of your income, right? So because of all the taxes and things that you pay. So, right, that's how we make those decisions. So with this particular client, we had already ran through the trifecta, but now they're looking at all these scenarios. Well, what if this? And what if the tenant doesn't pay? And what if we're bad at being property managers? And what, right? And it's like, okay, folks, we know from a data standpoint what decision is the best financial decision. So we're not moving forward with that decision, then it's not, hey, what's the best financial decision that's holding us up? Because we've already answered that. If we're not moving forward, then we have to start to unpack how we think, how we view money, how we view wealth creation, and more importantly, how we view ourselves. Because again, when we go back to this faith and we go back to confidence, and confidence is, hey, confidence is not cockiness, by the way. Confidence is, hey, I may not know the answer to this, but I know I can figure it out. I know there are other people who are doing this that I can get coached by and mentored by to help me do this, right? So as we're again kind of helping the client navigate this piece, it's like, yo, what is it that we're concerned about? So their homework assignment is going to be list out all the worst case scenarios. Don't spend hours upon hours talking yourself out of why this isn't going to work. Because here's the deal, especially when you're following a proven system. It'll be one thing if buying a home, staying there for a while, renting that home out and moving to another home. It'll be one thing if this was the first time this ever happened in life. But this is not a new concept. This is house hacking 101. This is how I went from having one home to having 25 doors in the early 2000s. I lived in a house, then I got a tenant ready for that when I moved, and I bought another house and moved it out. And then I did that 2 or 3 times, right? So here's the deal. This is a proven system. This is a proven tax shelter. This is a proven cash flow generator. This is a proven asset accumulator. So if we're not moving forward, why are we moving forward? We already answered the 3 questions. Does this increase my cash flow or passive income? Does this decrease my expenses? Does this decrease my taxes? So we've already answered those 3 questions. And we're following a system that's already proven. What it comes down to, y'all, is the anxiety of the unknown and the lack of faith or confidence in oneself to know that, hey, even if this goes bad, I have confidence that I can figure out how to turn, lemon into lemonade. And that's where a lot of people are challenged. So here's the deal, family. Like this is your takeaway on this. There's nothing new underneath the sun. The same systems that are being used to create wealth today were the same systems that were used to create wealth over 2,000 plus years ago. Right now, things may have changed today. We have AI and more resources and technology and things of that nature, but nothing has changed. How do you create wealth? You create wealth. We create wealth by creating a solution to a lot of people's problems. Period. Point blank. That's how you create wealth. Hey, how did that farmer become wealthy? Because he grew a crop that everybody needed and people was buying the stuff like crazy. He or she created a solution to somebody's problem. How did that doctor become wealthy? Hey, that doc figured out, this herb solved this problem and everybody wanted that herb and that doctor became wealthy, right? So there's nothing new underneath the sun. These principles are tried and true. So if you've answered the questions logically, if you are following a proven system, then how is it that you're not moving forward? That's when you have to unpack what the root issue is, right? And one way to unpack this root issue is to do the work and list out what is the worst case scenario. And when you look at that worst case scenario, you have to look at it twofold, right? What protects me from this worst case scenario? And is this worst case scenario actually even a fear, right? Um, I learned that fear stands for false expectations appearing real. People being afraid of stuff that may or may not happen. So again, if you solve for it, okay, this is the worst. The worst thing can happen is the tenant, never makes a payment and we're paying two mortgages. Okay. So then what do? Sell the property, right? You always can do that. Okay, get a new tenant. Okay, if I'm not good at being a property manager, hire a property manager, right? Like now, when you start to solve a worst case scenario, you start to become more creative, right? But as you start to solve for the worst case scenario, you become more creative. Now you start to gain clarity, right? Because here's the deal. When you start to look at the worst case scenario, you want to break it down into 4 steps. Step one, define the decision, right? Are you making a decision out of fear or strategy? Are you making a decision out of anxiety, the fear of what may never happen? Or like, how are you making that decision? So first thing is define the decision. Step two, ask what's the worst case that can realistically happen, not emotionally, but financially, right? Think cash flow, taxes, timelines, flexibility, right? Hey, if I invest in this stock, if I invest in this crypto, if I invest in this real estate, what is the realistic thing that can go happen? It could go down in value. Yup. Okay. So what's my solution? Well, I could sell it, right? I could lose some money, but I also going to create a tax loss that could actually reduce my taxes. You see now how, hey, does this have a positive or negative charge? You want to neutralize that charge and start to look at, hey, even if worst case scenario happened, how could I benefit from it? Did that connect the dots with anybody? Right? So again, ask yourself what realistically could happen, not emotionally, but financially. Step three, run the numbers, right? Okay, I don't want to oversimplify this, family, but here's the deal. Any good plan, financial plan, business plan, workout plan, nutrition plan should be able to be written. Oh, shit, I got one right here because I was just finishing up eating my sandwich. Hold on. You should be able to write it on a napkin. It should be as simple enough. Like people coming to the table with business plans with like 10,000 pages. Crazy. You should be able to write out a simple plan on a napkin, right? So here's the deal. Step three is you want to model it. Okay, let's put the numbers on paper and let's see what could happen. Worst case scenario, this. What does that do? Best case scenario, this. What does it do? Solve for worst case scenario. Everything else is gravy. So check this out. Let me give you guys another real life example. I have news for y'all. I know this is going to like blow somebody's mind. They're going to be like, "Bear, I can't believe that." Right? Here's some news for you. I'm gonna die. See that dramatic pause? I'm tripping. You know what I'm saying? We're all gonna die. So that's kind of not news. Like I don't plan on dying next week, but who knows? Nobody knows when the sand runs out their hourglass, right? But the reality is I'm gonna die. So if I know for sure this is going to happen. Worst case scenario, Perry's going to die. That ain't even worst case scenario. That's just a realistic, case scenario, right? But if I solve for that, how do I grow my business differently? How do I grow my business in such a way that when I do die, it continues to go, right? What do I do? How do I do my estate plan? Hey, I know I'm going to die. Let me have this trust in place. Hey, I know I'm going to die. Let me have this life insurance in place. Hey, I know I'm going to die. Let me have the instructions on how to invest the money in place. Hey, I know I'm going to die, right? So I know that sounds like, oh my gosh, Perry, that's so wild to me, right? Because again, it's so negative. It's not being negative, family. If I solve for the fact, if I saw for the fact that I know sometime in the future I'm going to leave this earth in the physical presence. If I know that, then plan for it. Now, worst case scenario is already planned for. And then now you can enjoy everything else. I can walk around with, with mitigated stress or low anxiety levels about, hey, what's going to happen to my family. I've already solved for it. We already have a trust in place. We already have millions of dollars of life insurance in place. We're already teaching the girls how to, think like the bank and how to invest, right. So we're doing these things in place. Think worst case scenario and solve for it and be excited about it. Because if you've already planned for the worst, I'm sorry, not planned, if you already solved for the worst things that can happen, then you can move forward with confidence and move towards the best things that can happen, right? So going back to my clients with the real estate, they're trying to talk themselves out of buying the real estate instead of looking at all the positive things that can happen. We're in the Columbus, Ohio market, one of the hottest real estate markets in the country. Best case scenario, hey, you keep that home and it increases in value by 100, 200, 300,000, I'm saying, dollars over the next 5, 10, 15 years. Maybe that's the piece that's going to help make them, right? Somebody else is paying the mortgage on it. The tenant is paying the mortgage on the tenant's money is going towards the mortgage and the line of credit. And they got an asset that's not only growing because of the appreciation in the marketplace, but they're also getting tax advantages. So instead of looking at, oh my gosh, we're going to be able to save taxes. Oh my gosh, we have an asset that is growing. That's not, no money's going out of our pocket to help it grow, right? Instead of looking at those positive things, they're so focused on what can happen on the negative side that they're not looking at the positive things. And again, I'm not overly optimistic, but nor am I overly pessimistic. I am stoic. I'm right in the middle. It is what it is. It's hot or cold. What can be considered cold to some may be blazing hot to somebody else. But I look at it from that frame. I look at it from that lens because that allows me to then make good decisions. Here's another one for y'all. I've been in this financial business, 20 years now, right? I've never seen a good financial decision made with emotion. Good financial decisions are based upon data, not emotion. The best investors are not emotionally involved. I remember I remember, I think I read in a book before, never fall in love with a real estate deal, right? Never fall in love with a property. Love the deal. Love the numbers, right? That's what that means. Don't fall. Oh my gosh, this is the best property ever. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's the windows are so big and the lighting is so great and it has the. No. Stop falling in love with the asset and you fall in love with the strategy, you fall in love with the numbers, you fall in love with the deal. You know what I'm saying? You plan for worst case scenario, right? You solve for worst case scenario and you plan for best case scenario, right? Hey, worst thing can happen is this. Best thing is this. So I'm gonna plan for this best stuff to happen because I'm gonna shoot for the best, but I've already solved for the worst things that can happen, y'all. So, okay, cool. And then, I'm sorry, step number 4. So, number 1, look at my notes here, define the decision. Step number 2, ask what's the worst that can realistically happen. Step number 3, model it out, put the numbers down. Hey, if it don't make sense on paper, it ain't gonna make sense in real life. Shoot, we can stop the training today. If it don't make sense on paper, it will not make sense in real life. All right. And step number 4, compare with best and worst case scenario. Now you have a range, not just a fantasy. Hey, this is the worst that can happen. Hey, this is the best that can happen. And the law of averages will kick in and you'll probably land someplace in the middle. Make your decision based upon the middle. All right. Man, I hope this is blessing some. If this is blessing somebody today, make sure y'all give me a shout out. Make sure you comment on the YouTube video, right? So I can get this in. I want to make sure that this is resonating with somebody because this is super, super important. Okay, let's finish this video up. I'm gonna give you guys the gift of clarity. Planning for the worst gives you the confidence to move like the wealthy because wealthy people don't guess. They project, they protect, and they prepare. The three P's. Project. Okay, I project this can make a lot of money. They protect, but I'm going to go ahead and solve for the worst case scenario. And three, they prepare. Okay, let me go ahead and get my team together, see if I'm looking at this the right way, right? Get the advice, get my team together, find the mentors, find the coaches, like everything that we teach about creating wealth. Like, if, I don't know how long y'all been rocking with me, but I'm not your traditional stockbroker. I'm not your traditional financial advisor, right? Somebody asked me before, like, Perry, how do you help your clients? I said, we help them three ways: coaching, consulting, and creation, right? And the coaching piece is the most important piece because the systems work. The systems work. Proven strategies are called proven strategies because they've been proven time and time again. That means that multiple people with different backgrounds and skill sets and expertise have ran the same play and gotten a same or similar result. So that means the strategy is proven. So if you're not moving forward with a proven strategy, if you're not moving forward, then it's not the strategy. It's you. It's you. You are the bottleneck to your success. So, how the wealthy function? Hey, I'm looking at this deal. The projections are it's going to make, million bucks. But in order to protect myself, let me make sure that the paperwork is in order. Let me make sure that we have the right structure in the LLC. Hey, let's make sure that I'm using somebody else's money. Hence why we use infinite banking and we teach 4D banking because that mitigates the risk as well. Y'all wonder why I pound the table so hard on infinite banking becoming your family bank? Because you mitigate risk. Your money can continue to grow inside your policy uninterrupted, and you can use a policy loan to then go out and fund a deal. Why are we so adamant about that? Because you now mitigate and lower your risk. How more often would you look to invest, or how creative would you be with finding investments if you knew you weren't using your own capital? I asked this question in front of a room one time. I said, okay, who's currently looking for investments, right? A couple hands went up. I said, well, who would start looking for more investments if you didn't have to use any of your own money and you were using my money? Everybody's hands goes up, right? Well, create that situation for yourself, right? So that's how the wealthy protect is they use leverage, not leverage in a risky fashion, but leverage in the sense of, hey, I'm going to keep my money working for me over here, and I'm going to be able to use that as collateral to get somebody else's money to go do a deal, to go make a play, to go invest in real estate, invest in a business, start a business, whatever the case may be, because they know worst case scenario. Oh, worst case scenario, the real estate deal goes bad. Worst case scenario, the business flops on its head. Well, I've protected myself because I still have my money growing uninterrupted over here, right? And now, in the case of the family bank piece, that policy loan now just gets deducted off of my death benefit when I die. They mitigated their risk. This is what wealthy do. This is what the banks do. Hence why you hear us pound the table saying, think like the bank. The bank ain't using none of its own money. Don't get me started, y'all. Jeez. Oh, okay. The wealthy project, the wealthy protect, and they prepare. So do this homework today, y'all. What's a financial decision that you've been stuck on because of fear and anxiety? Write down what is the worst case scenario that can happen. And if you're anything like me, throw it into AI, throw it into Chat GPT. Literally, let that be the prompt. Hey, I have a decision to make. The decision I have to make is X. Right now, these are the worst case scenarios, things that could happen. Help me make a decision on this, right? If these are the worst case scenarios that can happen, help me create solutions, right? And solve for these worst case scenarios so that I can move forward and make a good financial decision, right? There you go, y'all. So anyway, I hope this was valuable to y'all, right? Make a list of the worst case scenario. And when you're making that list of the worst case scenario that I learned from one of my coaches, which was actually a golden nugget that has stayed with me since then and will stay with me for the rest of my life. Every decision has a positive and a negative. Be able to look at those negatives and turn, because the deal is, if you're only looking at the negative, then you missed out on all the opportunity in the positive. Everything that you're going through, a loss of job, a loss of relationship, bad credit, right, are all stepping stones needed for you to become the great person that you are destined to be. But you have to go through these. But you not only have to go through these experiences, but you have to go through these experiences eyes wide open, not making decisions out of fear and anxiety of what may happen. All right, y'all. If this was powerful, make sure you like this, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you share. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers here in the next, 60 days. We appreciate you. We love you. We see you in the next video. Peace.